Welcome back to MysHistory. I'm Ronda, and this is where we talk about odd or unsolved historical mysteries. If that sounds like something that you might be interested in, then please consider subscribing, and don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. If you were here last week, we talked about the case in Australia of the Somerton man, the unidentified man who was found on the beach that nobody knew who he was. And then they exhumed his body 70 years later, just this year, to maybe identify who he was. This week, we're going to be back in the United States. We are going to talk about the mysterious disappearance of Jean Spangler. So I decided that I would go with a theme each week for whatever decade I will be speaking about. This week, we're in the 40s. October 7th, 1949, aspiring actress Jean Spangler kissed her 5-year-old daughter goodbye, told her sister-in-law that she was meeting with her ex-husband to discuss past due child support, and then she would be going to work as an extra in film. She walked out the door of the home that she shared with her mother, her brother, and sister-in-law, and she was never seen again. At the time of her disappearance, Jean was 27 years old. Jean Spangler was born in Seattle, Washington in 1923. Eventually, she would end up in California, where she attended high school in Los Angeles. In 1942, after a whirlwind romance, Jean married and then filed for divorce 6 months later, stating cruelty. She and her husband stayed together in an on-again, off-again relationship, resulting in the birth of a daughter in 1944. I'm not really clear on whether or not the couple divorced in 1942 when she originally filed, or in 1946 when they finally separated. Her ex-husband was granted full custody of their daughter, which he denied Jean access to seeing. This would have a prolonged custody battle that would ensue, where eventually custody of the child was granted to her mother in 1948. The two then moved in with Jean's mother, brother, and sister-in-law. It was also in 1948 when she started doing extra bit parts in movies, often uncredited. Her film work as an extra includes The Miracle of the Bells, When My Baby Smiles at Me, Chicken Every Sunday, Wabash Avenue, Champagne for Caesar, The Petty Girl, and she was currently working on Young Man with a Horn. Jean was having some mild success in film, but supplemented her income working as a dancer at Hollywood's Florentine Gardens. If that sounds familiar, it's because that club is also linked to Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. She was also an aspiring actress who was found murdered in 1947. Jean is said to have favored the looks of Elizabeth Short, as seen in this image. Black Dahlia is a different case entirely, but there is a connection, maybe, to the disappearance of Jean Spangler. As I stated earlier, that October 7th, 1949, Jean kissed her daughter goodbye and disappeared into the night. She left her daughter in the care of her sister-in-law, Sophie, as her mother was out of state visiting relatives. According to Sophie, Jean came down the stairs, asked how she looked, She smiled at Sophie, and then her little girl asked where she was going, and she said, going to work, and gave Sophie a wink. It was apparently not unusual for Jean to go to work late in the afternoon, as being an extra often involved shooting at night. But because of the wink, Sophie wondered if Jean was using Werk as a cover for something else. Jean did work for the Screen Extras Guild, but they have no record of her being called for work on October 7th, and no other studios have a record of her working on that date either. Sophie stated that 2 hours after she left, Jean called the apartment to ask about her daughter, and then told Sophie not to wait up as she would be working a full 8-hour shift. When Jean did not return home that Saturday, Sophie called the police to list her as missing. Sunday morning, a worker in Griffith Park found a handbag in the Ferndale area of the park. The straps of the bag were damaged as though they had been ripped away. There was no money in it. It was identified as being a clutch or a purse that belonged to Jean. The only contents of the purse was a handwritten note that read, quote, "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work best this way while Mother is away." It was not signed. Apparently, it ended with a comma as if there was another thought. The park, though, is less than 6 miles from Jean's home. There was no trace of Jean or what may have happened to her at the park. Jean's mother, obviously distraught, offered a $1,000 reward and begged the media for help in finding her missing daughter. Initially, police questioned Jean's ex-husband because, from a statistical standpoint, murders are most often committed by persons close to the victim, including ex-spouses. Considering the contention of their divorce and the child custody battle, this was really a no-brainer for police to start there. He had the most to gain from her disappearance. At the time, he was the strongest suspect in her disappearance. Police questioned him, and he said he hadn't spoken to Jean in weeks, and his new wife corroborated this. Well, apparently that was enough for the police, and they dismissed him, apparently. He was granted then temporary custody of his daughter, which prompted another court battle with Jean's mother, where the court granted visitation to Jean's mother. This didn't sit well with Jean's ex-husband, and so petty little man took his daughter, his new wife, his other children, left, moved to Florida, where he died in 2007. Police then turned to the note found in Jean's purse in the park. The only Kirk they could think of they tied to her movie career, and it was up-and-coming actor Kirk Douglas. Kirk did a scene with Jean in the movie Young Man with a Horn. He claimed that he didn't know her, but then he was reminded that he did a scene with a tall girl who wore a green dress. Then he remembered her and recalled having talked to her and kidded with her as he had with several other people on the movie set. He said he'd never seen her before that. He hadn't seen her since the scene. And aside from that, he was not even in Los Angeles as he was vacationing in Palm Springs. Jean's mother recalled that her daughter mentioned a Kirk that she had met, but she wasn't sure which studio he worked out of or if he worked out of a studio. And she further stated that a man named Kirk came to pick Jean up on 2 different occasions, but he never came to the door, so she had no idea who he was. Robert Cummings, who had befriended Jean during production of The Petty Girl, recalled that Jean had told him a week prior to her disappearance that she was involved with a new man. He asked if she was serious, and she reportedly said, "Not exactly, but I'm having the time of my life." Who the mysterious Kirk was remains a mystery. Also in the note was a mention to a Dr. Scott. Sophie didn't recognize the name. During a press conference, Detective Lieutenant Harry Didion stated that a physician named Scott was known to Jean and her nightclubbing friends, but they were not able to locate this Scott. Any other Dr. Scott in Los Angeles County claimed to have no knowledge of who Jean was. There was also a Scott who was identified in her life, who was an Army Air Corps lieutenant. His surname isn't known. It's alleged that Jean had an affair with him while her ex-husband was stationed overseas. And then she told a friend of hers that Scotty threatened her when she left him. There is no evidence to say that she ever saw him again after they broke things off in 1945. The lead was never followed up on. Do you ever get the idea that investigators dropped the ball quite a bit decades ago? Like things that weren't followed up on, things that they didn't look at? And you go, why? Why? It was alleged that Jean was 3 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance, and that she was seeking an abortion, which was illegal in 1949. Another lead led to Mickey Cohen and his criminal enterprise as they apparently reigned over Los Angeles in the 1940s. Mickey was a known mobster, and the theory suggested that Jean disappeared with 2 of his henchmen, Little Davy Ogle and Frank Nicoli, both of whom vanished a couple of days prior to Jean. Both of whom were under indictment for conspiracy, but all the evidence about their disappearance just kind of leads to a mob hit and has no connection to Jean. So kind of a dead end, especially if they disappeared 2 days before. Well, let's connect her to this. But they disappeared 2 days prior. Oh, well, then I guess we can't. Well, really? Maybe she should go talk to her husband again. Now, we circle back to Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, and the suspected connection to Jean Spangler. This gets a little wild, and it can tend to be a little long, so stick with me. A former LAPD homicide detective, Steve Hodel, is pretty sure he knows who killed Jean. His own father. He further believes that Jean was only one of his father's victims, because he believes that his father, Dr. George Hodel, was also responsible for the death of Elizabeth Short. As I also stated, Jean did bear a resemblance to Elizabeth, and they both worked at Hollywood's Florentine Gardens. Both women shared aspirations to be on the big screen. Mr. Hodel says that there were district attorney documents and logs to indicate that the police were, in fact, trying to tie the murder of Elizabeth to the disappearance of Jean, as well as 2 other murders. Who was Dr. Hodel? He was a doctor who had several run-ins with the law, to include being the suspect in the murder of his secretary, along with an arrest on charges of incest. Ew. LAPD is said to have bugged his house in 1950. Despite any indication of wrongdoing on the recordings, the doctor was never further charged. Shocking. It is further alleged that he was performing abortions for the rich and the famous, as well as many police officers if they got their girlfriends in trouble. According to Mr. Hodel, quote, the LAPD was a real-life LA Confidential back then. Interesting. It is wondered if Dr. Hodel could be the Dr. Scott mentioned in the note found in Jean's purse. Steve Hodel has his suspicions that Scott was actually another member of his father's active abortion ring, because they had those, headed by Dr. Audrain, with several other physicians who were alleged to have been paid hush money by the LAPD. Mr. Hodel put together the possibility that the Kirk mentioned in the note was referencing a Dr. Eric Kirk, who was arrested for performing abortions days prior to the disappearance of Jean. He suspects that Kirk was supposed to be the doctor to perform Jean's abortion, but with his arrest, she was in need of a new doctor. So, if there really was an abortion ring that the LAPD was protecting, could the man responsible for the disappearance of Jean be hiding in plain sight? If so, what would have been the point of making her disappear? It's not as if she was going to say anything. She knew the abortion was just as illegal as the doctors in the illegal abortion ring. Think, people. Further leading Mr. Hodel to suspect that his father was responsible was the fact that Jean's purse was found about a quarter of a mile from his father's house, the Sowden house, in the Los Feliz neighborhood. He further recalls that his older brother told him that his father was dating, quote, a gorgeous actress type named Jean at the time of her disappearance. There were sightings of Jean in the early hours of October 8th, 1949, with a man matching the description of Dr. Hodel. One witness said that he saw her at a restaurant on the Sunset Strip where she appeared to be arguing with 2 men. When the witness approached the table, the 2 men waved him away. The restaurant proprietor also said that he saw Jean early in the evening at a front table with a clean-cut fellow about 30 to 35. A gas station attendant told police that he had seen a man with a woman who matched Jean's description come to his station in a blue-gray convertible early on the morning of October 8th. The attendant said that the man paid for gas and then told him that they were going to Fresno. As they drove off, the attendant said the woman, quote, shrank down in the passenger seat and cried out, "Have the police follow this car." The attendant called the police, but by the time that they responded, the car was long gone, because of course it was. This account has led Mr. Hodel to further believe his father had something to do with the disappearance of Jean, as at the time he drove a 1936 black Packard sedan, which resembled the one described by the attendant. Mr. Hodel thinks that Jean started dating his father in either late September or early October. On October 6th, his father was arrested for incest and he bailed out the same day. The night Jean disappeared, October 7th, she was seen arguing with a guy at a restaurant, leading Mr. Hodel to think that she knew something. What something that was, I don't know. That his father was a murderer? Who knows? Mr. Hodel was so certain that his father had something to do with this case that in 2012, he received clearance to look for forensic evidence at the Sowden house his father once lived in. He hired a retired police sergeant to walk the property with his dog. There were 2 searches, one in November of 2012 and the other in September of 2013. During each of these searches, they recovered soil samples from both the basement and a slope behind the house where the dog indicated the smell of human remains. Those soil samples were tested by a forensic anthropologist where the presence of human remains was actually found. It was believed that the remains could most likely be found in an area adjacent to the house's lot. At all the time that this was going on, an actress from that 70s show was living in the home. And, as such, according to Mr. Hodel, LAPD brushed off the discovery. Why wouldn't they? I'm sure we're all shocked. Mr. Hodel would reach out to the actress via her attorney to request permission for a non-invasive sweep of her property, which was denied. Mr. Hodel firmly believes that there is a body buried on the property. Whether or not it is that of Jean Spangler remains a mystery. Sadly, a case file for Jean Spangler no longer remains. There was never a murder report filed. It was always only listed as a suspicious missing person case. Due to the classification that she was just a missing person and not a homicide victim, leads one former detective in LAPD to believe that any existing evidence was likely discarded over the past 7 decades since Jean's disappearance. This includes the purse and the note. Thankfully, I guess we have photos, but that's not really the same. One thing her family has always been adamant about and believed was that she has to be dead, because there would be no way that she would leave her daughter after fighting for 2 years to get custody. Have you heard of this case? Do you think it was her ex-husband who was involved and his new bride covered for him, he did have the most to gain from her disappearance, namely the daughter that he lost custody of. What about a mob connection? It was the 1940s after all. Mobs were everywhere. And who was Kirk? Who was that guy? Is it possible that Dr. Hodel had something to do with this case? And why did they only seem focused on the acting angle and the doctor angle, but they never worked the connection of Florentine Gardens? Why? Could her disappearance be connected to Elizabeth Short? There are so many questions about this case, but at the end of the day, no one knows what happened to Jean Spangler. What are your thoughts? Let me know down in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share this video to get it out there, and maybe we could all solve the disappearance of Jean Spangler. Also, don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video, which is typically Tuesdays for this, and Thursdays is another video. Until next time, stay safe out there. It's a crazy world we live in. Bye.